All right, what's up, guys? We're live. Chuck and Chris here. It's August 21st. We have 15 or 16 days left in draft season. Chris, how we doing?
Man, it's hard to believe. It goes by fast, my friend. We're doing good, and we have a lot of moving parts this time of year. 2 weeks of the preseason have wrapped. A lot of moving ADPs. We still have our free ADP tracker up on OccupyFantasy.com. I'll actually put that on the screen here, Chuck. See, I'm not even logged in, and I can access this because it's completely free, even to non-members on our website. So if you want to check out some of what we have to offer, this ADP tracker is definitely one of the things we recommend you look at. No surprise here with Sam Darnold being the fastest rising ADP over the last 7 days because basically it's been a week since we got the news. JJ McCarthy is going to be out for the majority of the season. I guess there is a slight chance he returns late in the year, Chuck, but probably not going to hold our breath for that. So we can cross Darnold off, and then we got couple of running backs here. Jordan Mason with the 49ers, Braylon Allen with the Jets, tight end Ben Sinnott with the Commanders, and then your Jordan Whittington with the LA Rams up almost a full round. So anybody in recent drafts? I know you've been doing a lot of shows already this week. I just haven't talked to you in a few days myself personally. Anyone here that's been catching your eye that's rising?
Um, Not really. I think everyone on this list makes sense. Like Toe Bear is probably the only one I haven't been really clicking on, and then Benson not just a little concerned about if he's going to block or actually run routes. But everyone there makes sense. All late round guys, so it's easy for them to move.
How about on the other side of this list here? We've got Marshawn Lloyd dropping a little bit because of his injury. A couple of Denver players, rookies, Troy Franklin at wide receiver, Audric Estime at running back. And then this is pretty correlated with Jordan Mason rising for the 49ers. We have Eli Mitchell falling.
A couple of these are so funny. Like Audric Estime, his ADP rose so quick, and it feels like it dropped just as quick.
Yeah,
But I think he's still fine in the last round.
I'm still clicking on him. A player down
Mhm.
here I'm not clicking on is actually Kendra Miller anymore
Yep.
because he has not been practicing whatsoever. Pretty good chance he's probably not even going to make the Saints roster. So, yeah, I would agree with you, Chuck. Not really a tremendous amount of surprises here. Where are we at here with Underdog Best Ball Mania? 1.5 million to first. We're just about 80% full. Once again, it looks like the folks at Underdog have timed this appropriately. I think we're going to have this fill basically right before kickoff on September 5th.
I want to say last year's BBM4 filled the day of
Yeah.
on that Thursday.
So kudos to them for sure. What is there? Well, I mean, there are a lot of other contests that are still here. We have the Puppy 3, which still is not full, 150 max $5 contest. And that would take you $750 to max out. Hold me accountable. I think that math is correct. And I think, Chuck, I feel like we say this almost every month, but Underdog just keeps outdoing themselves. We literally have, I think, the best promo offer we have not just seen from Underdog, probably that we've ever seen anywhere in this industry. Would you agree, disagree?
Absolutely. Like the sports books used to have gigantic offers like this, but it would be in the form of free bets. It wouldn't typically just be like deposit 1,000, here's 1,000 in credit. And so they don't do that in 2024 anymore. So just there's a lot of reasons why this is the best promotion.
Yeah. So what we're talking about is, like, you see the promo code on the screen, Occupy2, starting this week, 100% deposit match up to $1,000 for first-time users. So that means you can deposit 1,000, get $1,000 matched to play within a different draft contest. Champions or pick'em slips here on Underdog. Really, really fantastic. I've noticed they've pretty much adopted the 20-second pick clock for all of these other 150 max tournament, Chuck. So that's probably on the table as like the new normal for fast drafts. I think that's maybe food for thought discussion for us as we move forward. But I am going to jump into a Best Ball Mania 5 here. So if anybody watching wants to join along and draft along with us, I know we have a lot of regular viewers who tend to like to do that. And I actually picked a good time to jump into the lobby here because there are still 9 spots open, now 8, for this contest. So please get on in here. Let's fill this thing and let's talk some shop and draft some teams tonight. Chuck, what other than the ADPs that we talked about when we started the stream, what have you noticed structurally at all now that we're very much officially into full-on draft season with every possible user kind of looking at these different contests. You feel like things are a little different throughout the draft? Because I've certainly felt like they
Yeah, and it's hard to know how much of it is because of this weird training camp news. Like I was talking to Chris before the show, we have weird news on basically everyone in the first round, and then how much of it is just casual drafters coming in. Because I've seen Garrett Wilson go at number 4, like definitely too many times over the last few days. I don't think that should ever be a thing. And then I want to say quarterbacks are being drafted a little bit earlier, so you have to be a
are.
little bit more cognizant of making sure you get your stack.
Let's see some news. Thanks to the folks over at NBC Sports. I think they aggregate things pretty well. It looks like Javon Baker with the Patriots has fallen outside of their starting trio. Chuck, I think we're looking at Tyquan Thornton, Demario Douglas, and Jesus Christ, I can't believe I'm drawing a blank here on the last wide receiver there.
Poke.
Kendrick Bourne when he's healthy, and then Jalen Polk exactly as the starting 3 wide receivers for the worst team in the National Football League. But it does bring to the forefront just some more round 18 picks we can mix in. Tyquan Thornton not really being selected. Check if he's going to see more playing time than we anticipated. Probably not a bad idea to mix him in the 18th round, right?
I think we were interested in him last year, right? Just
Yeah.
again, a guy in the last round who has the ability to get open and score a long touchdown.
Yeah.
I mentioned this on the show yesterday, and Jets, who's our most loyal viewer, commented on the Discord that I said the Patriots could be historically bad. I'm getting really concerned thinking about how their players are going to score fantasy points because I'm taking a lot of, KJ Osborne's, Demario Douglas, Antonio Gibson later in the draft, and I'm getting kind of worried that I probably shouldn't be. Lightning
Demario
quick pick
Doug, I
here.
mean, yeah, I'll ruminate on that for you. I feel much, but I was hoping to get Tyreek. I knew it wasn't going to happen. So we talked, I guess, about you and I talked about Chase before we started the show and how I guess we're both somewhat fading him here. My gut is I prefer Amon Ra right here. Do you think I'm crazy? I mean, I know he's our cover boy tonight. I think I know Underdog doesn't have it projected this way, but I have Amon Ra projected out of all the guys left here to score the most points this year. So he's the one I want.
To me, he feels like the safest guy, and we don't necessarily want safe, but just I don't think anyone questions the ceiling. He played through an injury, like a pretty big injury last year, if I remember
Mhm.
correctly, and he was great. And there's just question marks around the other guys. I mean, CeeDee Lamb's going to be playing week 1. Jamar Chase is probably going to be playing week 1. But yeah, I'm taking Amon Ra at pick 4 pretty regularly now. So my top 4 is basically these 4 exactly in this order.
What I would prefer to have happen here, I mean, it's probably a little chalky, admittedly, is to get Debo on the way back, but his ADP is a little higher than 21, so I don't think that's going to be possible. But there is Brandon Ayuk sitting right here in the second, third round. I think his ADP has been kind of falling because he hasn't been practicing with his holdout slash weird, trade demand situation thing that's going on here. So as we come into the home stretch, how are you feeling about selecting Brandon Ayuk? I feel pretty good that he's going to be playing football somewhere, and basically every day that goes by, it becomes even more likely that it's still going to be San Francisco.
I don't think I'm really taking him in the second round, which is funny because I've taken him as early as like 13, but I'm also getting him as late as 36 recently. And so if I get him in the third round, like if Brandon Ayuk was my third pick here, where you have Amon Ra in the first round, I'd be pretty thrilled to get Ayuk there.
So talk to me about your mindset. Maybe not even just on Amon Ra teams, but on the second half of the second round here. How are you treating that?
Hope that
Any?
I
Go
just
ahead.
hope that Nico Collins is there. If
Okay.
not, hope Devonte
He
Adams is there.
yeah, Devonte Adams, another guy I think I've noticed slipping a little bit into the late
Mhm.
second, early third. I'm happy to click on him. Devonte Smith when he falls, I like clicking on him as well. And we'll wait until a little later in the draft. There's another wide receiver going in like the fifth, sixth round that I've noticed has been falling quite frequently, at least in the might be a base rate fallacy here. I get it, but at least in the pods that I've been in over the last week, I've like constantly had the opportunity to pick this player 15 picks past ADP, and I don't really understand why. So we definitely will use that as conversation fodder over the next couple of rounds here. I do have obviously the 49er correlation that I'm interested in with the Detroit Lions, but I also know intuitively based off of our previous discussions about high owned combinations, that that's what the field is going to be doing here. So I'm also kind of okay with just drafting Amon Ra as a standalone because we know he's going to be a high floor player. Does that sound okay to you?
Absolutely. Yeah. And another point about that question you asked me about things I notice overall, these injury newses out of training camps are really affecting people not selecting people. Like you hinted at a receiver in the fifth round. I think there's two that are really falling kind of hard because of news out of camp. And then guys like Jameer Gibbs, like I had the opportunity to pair Jameer Gibbs with Amon Ra yesterday, and I went ahead and did that because I don't think it's going to be very common. But stuff like that, just these guys are going to be fine for week one. And even if they're not, they're going to be fine by week four. So just take the
Mhm.
value, I think. Let the other guys
S-
skip it.
Surprisingly, not as many badges in this particular lobby as I would expect to see, on an evening here as we're approaching the season kicking off, and most importantly, on a night where we don't have some preseason games. We do have the preseason returning tomorrow. I believe we have two games. The player I wanted going, I was kind of hoping that he would make it back to me. Saquon Barkley, Kyron Williams, Chris Olave, Derrick Henry, Cooper Cup. Who you like here?
Kyron or one of the receivers.
I am going to go with Cooper Cup because I'm still under index on him. I have a lot of Kyron already. I don't disagree with you there, but I just feel like Cooper's one of those players that I still have like less than the field rate of 8% that I want to correct that on. So we have an opportunity to pair him actually with a San Francisco player for his week 15 playoff correlation. So now I have extra incentive to try to get another or get a 49er on this roster. I'm kind of happy with that move here.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've done this exact setup, and it feels really good. Get the double correlation, and it might be slightly more common, but I don't think this combo is going to be drafted as much as it probably should be, especially considering Cooper Cup's ceiling.
And then there's like a non-zero chance as I probably speak it into existence and erase it from possibility here that I could get Kyron anyway. So now Maddie's definitely going to take him in the next 12 seconds. After we make this pick, we can get back to what I was talking about before because I lost my train of thought, to be honest with you. Um, he's running us right down to zero. Malik Neighbors. How do you feel about Mr. Neighbors? I know I don't have enough of him either.
I'm warming up to him. I was kind of not taking him before. When he falls to like 29-30, I'm pretty happy to take him since I'm underweight, and that's probably the range I want to get him. But I don't know. Daniel Jones has never supported a true wide receiver one. Malik Neighbors is probably the best talent he's ever had at the position.
Man, we're rooting for let's be honest, we're rooting for uh, Daniel Jones to get benched there, right? I mean, I hate to just come out and say that. I'm just going to take Kyron, and now I have extra incentive to grab Matthew Stafford a little later in this draft check. What do you think?
Oh, love it. Yeah, I've done this too. Cooper and Kyron.
And I don't think I would have had the opportunity to do this if I did the reverse, if I had taken Kyron first. So I'm happy with the way that worked
Never.
out.
Yeah. We do
Um,
have
Go
a
ahead.
question in the chat from Wigs3. If we have any thoughts on best ball on DK for those weeks 1 through 4 contest, draft like we normally would with ADP, or draft players from teams with best odds to win.
Yeah, because we definitely have game lines, right? So, what are your thoughts on that? I honestly haven't looked too much at those condensed multi-week contests. I think they're definitely interesting. Obviously, underdog theme show here, so appreciate you watching. We're not going to spend too much time on the competitors in the space here, but weeks 1 through 4 contests, I would think if we have access to information like high totals, that should probably sway our decisions a little bit, right?
Yeah, with the so week 4 is all that matters. Just completely stack for week 4, and then so I didn't do any entries in this contest. I have enough on my plate already, but stack for week 4, and then I can't imagine the ADP is anywhere close to correct in that contest. So ignore ADP because certain players, I mean, the guys with the best game environments are just going to have more value in those first 4 weeks. So I don't know who they are. Like I said, I haven't researched it at all, but I'm sure you can easily find what teams are projected to score the most points weeks 1 through 3, 1 through 4.
I feel like NFL.com got a little bit of facelift. I am completely lost trying to find this week 4 schedule. All right. Since we're on the subject, just really quickly, I don't have the totals in front of me, but just looking at matchups. Um, Patriots 49ers. 49ers are going to put up a big number against that
Oh
defense.
yeah.
Chiefs Chargers. Bills Ravens looks like a good one. And then a Monday Night Football doubleheader, you got the Titans and the Dolphins and the Seahawks and the Lions. So I would agree with you, Chuck. If I was playing that contest, I would probably, just like we do here for Best Ball Mania 5 or any other contest that culminates in championship week and week 17, I'd be looking to correlate for that final round.
And I'm thinking take less rookies and draft running backs earlier too. Don't go zero RB because they're not going to kick in by the time week 4 rolls around.
Right. That's a good point. Unless we obviously have news that shifts things in backfields, but then everybody would be reacting to it. So
Yeah.
that was a little later than I thought Tank Dell was going to go.
This is
Arizona is my week 17 correlation for the Rams. The Jets week 16, and I already mentioned the 49er correlation. I'm kind of in a place here, Chuck, where like I'm drafting in a way that I haven't like fully done yet. So like I'm uncomfortable with what my strategy should be here. I have a lot of interest in Amari Cooper because I tend to just click on him all the time in this range. But that Trey McBride correlation with the Rams is screaming at me. So I think that's what I'm going to do here.
I like that. Yeah, because I mean Amari, we want a third receiver, but if this team gets to the finals, you're probably going to want to rather have a Trey McBride. I mean, you could backstack with like Wilson or Dortch, but
I'd rather have a high upside asset. And then
yeah.
I got the ability here to maybe even decide to go with like straight up, right? What Kyler Murray versus Matthew Stafford. I know the ADP cost is not comparable, but which one do we think is more likely to be the one you want to own this year? I've got both options now.
So we've talked about this idea before, where we don't want to necessarily target. Trying to think how to word this. Like we draft two quarterbacks, we don't want them both to be from the same week 17 game because what if that game just points aren't scored and it's really tough to compete. But this team is depending so much already on that game going off. I think it's fine to draft both of them because it has to be good for the regular season too.
I wasn't even honestly considering that, but again, just because it does fit kind of what I do prefer to do here is like I'll call Kyler kind of the second tier elite range, and then like a cheap quarterback, it would fit that kind of build. So maybe we will look at that here. Obviously, a Jared Goff option still on the table as well. But Jared Goff is going to be on like 50% of Amon Ra teams. So I am just kind of in general, I'm probably over indexed on that already. So I'm trying to think about different things to do.
Yeah, I don't hate it.
I'm feeling some type of way. This is not going to be a hot take at all, but about the Chiefs again. I think they're going to crush again this year, man. And so I'm kind of building up towards. I think rookie Xavier Worthy is probably going to be one of the better picks in this range. One of those players that if you don't have enough of, as we get into the meat of the season here, that you're going to regret it. They've looked pretty good. Their starting unit with Mahomes in the preseason, they always look good, man. But Worthy seems like a player that I think is kind of undervalued. I think he could have just as much of a role as Rashee Rice here, and he's still cheaper than he is.
Well, the thing too about Worthy now, it kind of looks like he's going to get the full snap share from week 1. Rashee Rice took until like week 7 or 8 last year to get above 60, and then he never fell below it again. But if Xavier Worthy's like full go out the gates, has to be a smash.
And again, just fits my mantra. I like good players that are on good teams, right? So Xavier Worthy, first round pick. Patrick Mahomes seems to want to throw him the ball quite frequently based off of our limited preseason samples. So I definitely am going to buy in now. If he has a great season, he's probably going to end up in this Rashee Rice range next year, maybe even higher, right? Because I think he's like a true X wide receiver one type guy, whereas Rice is more of like they move him around the field, they use him in the slot. So I think that the ceiling with Worthy is a little higher.
I don't disagree with that. Yeah, I see Rashee Rice as kind of like a. I saw someone else say this on Twitter. Amon-Ra St. Brown light, which
Okay,
his eight
which
odd isn't too high. He's going to command a lot of targets.
I think like I am not a quote unquote film grinder, so please don't take this over the word of people that actually do grind the film. But I just feel like Xavier Worthy has more of a comp to like being able to hit the ceiling of like a Tyreek or a Mike
Yeah.
Evans, like command that kind of volume and roll on an offense. You know what I mean?
Well, he can do in one play what might take Rashee Rice 4.
Right.
Terry McLaurin, another guy falling. So the guys in this range you mentioned earlier, one of them's off the board, Christian Kirk. This is probably actually the earliest I've seen him go in the last couple days. And then Terry McLaurin and Calvin Ridley are falling past pick 60 pretty regularly.
He
And
actually, the player I was going to bring up is just went pretty close to his actual ADP. It's Keenan Allen that I've seen regularly fall into the 6th and 7th round. We haven't seen any reason that he's like not going to be starting in 2 wide receiver sets, 3 wide receiver sets for the Bears with Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams, who's looked excellent in the preseason, right? So like I don't understand why people are out on him. I do get people might be excited about Odunze and they think Moore is like clearly in 2 wide receiver sets, but Keenan Allen in this range, it just seems like it's a free fantasy points, man. I think it's a great pick.
Yeah, and this is one of the ways I've been making up for taking Rashi Rice so early in the 40s is get Keenan Allen late, and it's like, well, kind of get the same value that those early Rice teams got.
I also think we got recent news on how Kyler looks way better this year, like way more ahead of schedule than he was last year when he came back from his injury. So it seems like even Cardinals camp is, and I don't think Kyler was bad last year when he came back. So,
Yeah.
if we're looking at Kyler Murray being closer to his peak form, maybe even above the peak form we saw previously earlier in his career, he could be a screaming value here in the sixth, seventh round. But hey, I'm obviously going to talk myself into it if it's something that I want to do here. So I'm not upset about Kittle was probably the next best option for me to get that San Francisco correlation with LA and Amon-Ra St. Brown. But with Trey McBride already on this team, I'm not like tremendously upset that he just went to somebody else. So
David Montgomery.
I love him down here. He's another running back that I just can't stop clicking on, to be honest with you. I could go with Kyler here. But there was some kind of injury news with Deontay Johnson, wasn't there? There's something going on there.
I don't think it was an injury. They said it wasn't. It was a personal matter, but they said it wasn't serious.
I don't have a specific plan here.
Oh, he did have an injury scare after he came back, actually. Never mind.
I think I'm just going to take Kyler now and punt my decision on a wide receiver or running back to the next spot because I kind of feel like there was a chance Kyler would have fallen a little bit to pick 76, but I'm comfortable with that pick here, and I can punt off my wide receiver running back decision for a few more picks here.
I saw someone on Twitter earlier. I can't remember his whole username. It's easy, the letters and then a bunch of numbers, but he did very well in BBM last year. This guy in the best ball community said something like, "Just take your quarterback. It's not worth trying to push them, around
Yeah,
the turn to get, for example, James Cook 6 picks past ADP."
that's fair because if you're, especially when you're building like a roster that's so heavily dependent on having that quarterback, like just
Yeah,
take the guy.
yeah.
It's fair. What's your
James,
favorite kind of ice cream?
my favorite kind of ice cream. I mean, the
Yeah,
default is cookies and cream, but
cookies and cream.
yeah.
Sitting here crushing some watermelon sherbet right now, right on the show. Brought to you by this no name brand watermelon sherbet. As I think about my picks here,
I was gonna ask if it
so
was that Costco brand because someone
yeah,
actually recommended it to me.
no, not a Costco member myself. This came from like a local ice cream shop in my town here. So, CJ Stroud was going 2 rounds earlier than this. I feel like we've had this discussion a couple of times on the show, but if his ADP has normalized here at the round 6, 7 turn, I know one thing I want to do over the next 15 days is get a few more Texan stacks in because I don't have as many as I feel like I want.
Oh yeah, well, I mentioned Nico Collins has basically been my default second round pick if he's available, and CJ Stroud going past pick 70, it's so good. And just another point, if you're drafting Rashi Rice to help make up for that ADP value you missed out on, get CJ Stroud late, and it's another way to help alleviate it.
This is my least favorite. I guess we're just like truly in the proverbial dead zone here, but this is my least favorite RB group at the top of the ADP board to have to select from. We're starting to see, you mentioned people reacting to injury news, a little bit of separation now between Najee and Jalen Warren in the Pittsburgh
Mhm.
backfield. How are you, who are your favorite running backs in this range? Who should I be looking at in your opinion?
Well, the two that I like the most, Montgomery and Connor, went off the board. I'm comfortable clicking Kamara, and then Najee Harris has been like the priority for me because I thought his ADP is kind of going to go up, which it has been. And then I'm okay clicking Jalen Warren past pick 100 though, which I'm getting pretty regularly.
I like Keon Coleman here. Curtis Samuel seems like he's at risk of missing a few weeks of the season. And then Khalil Shakir with the Bills, who goes a couple rounds later, he seems like he's going to be a better value if these numbers don't really change for ADP with the Buffalo receivers, with Curtis Samuel missing some time. But we've seen Keon Coleman pretty much get a bunch of work with the starters. in preseason. So I think that's enough for me to feel like, okay, he's clearly going to play a lot with Josh Allen. So I'm officially comfortable with this round 7 ADP. Have exposure to a player on an offense that we think is going to be good. And believe it or not, there is a little bit of correlation with Amon-Ra St. Brown in the fantasy football playoffs as well. So that was a reason why I was interested in that there also.
I'm on the other side of you from this. I'm pretty heavy on Khalil Shakir. It might just be that 30 pick ADP difference,
Okay.
but I haven't really taken Keon Coleman that much. I might start to mix him in now when he falls since Curtis Samuel's kind of hurt and Curtis Samuel's ADP got kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, I like all of them. I have been selecting all of them. I don't have as much Shakir as Keon Coleman here, but I just think I want to get pieces of Buffalo's offense. I think people aren't sure who the wide receiver one is going to be, but we're looking at, again, I'm not saying any of these guys are going to be Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, but we're coming off of seasons where people wanted to pay a first round pick for Josh Allen's wide receiver one, a fourth round pick for his wide receiver two, and Gabe Davis. And there's no wide receiver on that team going in those ranges. So somebody here has to be undervalued if they're going to command that kind of volume, right? It's just a reality of like the math of the situation with Josh Allen. So I'm happy to take shots on all these guys.
So I think this is the main concept I actually wanted to discuss with you today on the show. I mentioned it yesterday because people have been asking about Ray Davis, and I mentioned so I'm fading James Cook. I just don't like him at the cost. I've started clicking Ray Davis this past week, but like I said, like I've been fading Keon Coleman. I think Curtis Samuel's too expensive. I'm okay clicking Khalil Shakur. I'm at like 10%. I'm at 10% Josh Allen, but so it's like if I'm fading James Cook, shouldn't I be making that up with something else in the Bills' offense? Because am I just saying this team is not going to score points, or is every piece just so expensive that they're not worth paying the price for the fantasy points they're going to score?
So you're trying to be a little bit more intentional with your fades and
Mm-hmm.
think about the other side of it. I haven't been clicking on Ray Davis myself, but the logic stands up to reason. If you're out on, if we are out on James Cook at cost, then that means we think at least one of two things are true. He fails compared to his peers in the same ADP range, or I guess it's an and or he loses outwork to other people in his backfield. Right? I feel like it's closer to he just doesn't outperform the other running backs in his ADP range. So I'm not. I haven't crossed the bridge where I'm clicking on Ray Davis yet, but I can see why you would be there if that makes sense.
Okay.
My
Gotcha.
favorite player to pair with Josh Allen, since we're on the subject of Buffalo, it is still Dawson Knox, basically at the very end of drafts. I think he's a little undervalued. He's probably still going to have a pretty good red zone role at least, but if they're running a lot of 12 personnel, two tight end sets, Dawson Knox is basically free fantasy points as well.
I like that too. Yeah, and I'm fading Kincaid, so it makes sense if I want to attack on Knox as much as I'm punting tight end.
I don't really have a great feeling about Zamir White anymore, seeing how much work he's been getting in preseason. So I'm a little terrified of that. This is where wide receiver gets pretty ugly, but I do like Romeo Dobbs. We saw him dominate at the end of the season for the Packers. And I think they're going to be good again this year. So I feel like he's one of the better non Christian Watson wide receivers on the Packers. He might even be safer than Christian Watson. Christian
He's
Watson,
safer.
we just know what the ceiling is there with Watson, but
Yeah.
all the hamstring injuries seem to be a problem. How are you doing on Packers exposure? Jordan Love, he's another quarterback I feel like I don't have enough of.
I thought I was doing pretty well on Jordan Love to start draft season, but I noticed that I have not been clicking him recently. It's because I stopped clicking Jaden Reed where he's going, and it's not that I'm out on Jaden Reed, but it's just the Christian Kirks,
Mm-hmm.
the Keenan Allen, Terry McLaurin's are all falling, and then I guess I'm not getting uh, Watson, Christian
Uh,
Watson as much because I'm drafting the running backs in that range because they're all moving up. But I still love the offense. It's gonna be kind of spread out, so it's tough to know who to get to. And I stopped drafting Marshawn Lloyd.
yeah, I've quit him cold turkey, but I have not. Related to our last discussion with Buffalo, I have not been selecting AJ Dillon. So have you been doing that?
No, I've started taking Josh Jacobs a little bit more, but no,
Yeah,
I just don't have a backup on Green Bay because I mean, if it's Marshawn Lloyd, it probably still is. I have enough already.
I don't love what's here for running back. I think my favorite in this range is Tony Pollard, but Brian Robinson. I like Brooks. I don't think he's going to make it two more picks. Maybe he does. Still not clicking on Javante, man. That's kind of how I'm treating these running backs that are available at this particular juncture.
I did it. I'm clicking on Javante sometimes. Yeah.
Wow.
Just he catches the ball. Tony Pollard's the guy I'm clicking on very comfortably. When these are my options, so Tony Pollard and Raheem Mostert are the two guys I'm clicking on the most in this range.
I've noticed a lot with the quarterbacks here that people are focused as they should be to some degree, but they're extremely focused on their stacks, Chuck. Because
Mhm.
you definitely see some guys like I've seen Tua, for example, like just fall like a rock while
Yeah,
Goff, Herbert, Cousins, Stafford all go. Just for example, um, man, flipping a coin on Brooks Pollard. Do you think you have a preference there?
on this particular team, I think you're okay either way. Actually, since you have Kyron, I probably lean towards Pollard since it's my second running back, but I
Yeah,
could I could go either way.
we went with Pollard. That was the coin flip we made. Plus, I ran out of time, so
All works out. Thing with Jonathan Brooks is I'm getting him at pick 130 on the other site, so it's really hard for me to click him at pick 100 here. I
so
like him though.
if we're not, I guess this is going to be the theme of the show a little bit. I'm definitely underweight on Jonathan Brooks. I think I need to click a little bit more on Chuba Hubbard, potentially even Miles Sanders at the very end of drafts, because I think that's a pretty well correlated decision as well.
I did Miles Sanders a couple times, and I haven't been clicking Chuba, but on certain teams I will if I need running back points immediately. Like if I go super zero RB, Chuba I think is one of the best picks.
I think a lot of people just felt so burned with RB1 Tony Pollard with the Dallas Cowboys last year. That's a big, I mean, he's definitely on a worse team now. No question there. But ninth round, if he is even in like a super RB1A, 1B committee with Ty Spears, I still feel like this ADP is too low, especially if he catches passes, which we know he does.
If assuming he stays healthy, I don't see any like range of outcomes, whatever. It's 0% chance that he doesn't outperform this ADP.
How many touchdowns did he score last year? I'm actually asking you. I don't remember.
My guess is 4, but that might be a high guess. 4, dude. Like,
So like that's what it felt like. He scored far less often than he should have for the amount of work that he had gotten as a Tony Pollard owner last year. Definitely felt that pain.
6.
But
It was 6. Sorry.
I think if he has a consistent role in terms of how many touches did he have?
He had 252 carries and 55 catches.
That's
So
6 touchdowns is pretty bad for that volume. So I don't
yeah,
over or under 300 touches again this year. Then what do you think?
I'm gonna take the over. I
You are
just
gonna okay.
yeah.
So I guess you're helping me because this is what I was trying to build up towards. So if he sees the same volume, apparently potentially more volume, we should see those touchdowns go up, right?
I think so. We should.
Um,
Well, was there a
so
weird stat about
no,
his carries in the 5?
yes, I mean he was terrible inside there. That's the weird stat. So 300, 300 touches, 6 touchdowns. You're talking a 2% score rate. I know this isn't usually a math show for you, but I can tell you on average, running backs score a touchdown on about 4% of their carries across the league. So he's an underperforming running back. He should regress in a good way that we can benefit from in fantasy football. And I mean, if he's going to have that many touches, if he's going to score more touchdowns, he shouldn't be a ninth round pick. He should be like a third, fourth round pick. So Tony Pollard's a great pick in this range for sure.
Yeah, I feel pretty great about Tony Pollard. I'm a little confused why he's not going ahead of the guys in front of him. Like Taze is there, but I mean, I'm fading Taze pretty hard, so I hope that I'm right. And Pollard had 15 carries inside the 5. It's bad. Well, the 15 carries is great. It's among the league leaders. Only
It's
scoring
just
6
the
touchdowns is
efficiency
bad.
was not great. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a very, very important clarification. Um, my go-to here is always Jacoby Myers or Brandon Cooks. So I want to almost force myself to do something different, but it's not going to happen today. I'm going to take Jacoby Myers again. So I'm still kind of struggling with that. Is the reason why I brought that up. I'm just kind of leaning into. I don't know if this is good or bad. I really don't because I don't think we've had enough years of best ball to fully know for sure. But basically, we're trying to build stacks. I kind of have a core of like quote unquote my guys in each range of the draft that I like drafting. So like, do you kind of build that way, just like on the high level? Like, you're obviously correlating, but are there just guys that you're sprinkling into all your rosters that you feel good about? Hey, if I'm over the field on these particular guys, I'm fully okay with that because Jacoby Myers is absolutely one of those guys for me.
Yeah, Jacoby and Gabe Davis are the two guys I'm way over the field on in this range. And then I don't know. I started getting scared off of Shaheed, maybe with his ADP rising, but I still like mixing him and Brandon Cooks in. But Jacoby and Gabe Davis to me are the two clear picks when these are the options.
We feeling good about G Vegas, Gardner Minshew getting the nod there as the starting quarterback. That was one of our big news items that came out of this past weekend.
It's so funny. Like I was drafting Gardner Minshew teams back in May, and then I was kind of sitting here like, what am I doing? I should wait for some clarification. Turns out he is starting. Doesn't mean he's starting the playoff weeks. And then I started taking AOC, and now it's like, well, either way, I'm going to get some points from this team. So,
I think that there's a pretty good chance that each of those guys start
yep.
5+ games this year. You know what I mean? So we'll see how that goes.
Well, in regards to Devonte Adams, I think I was more excited about AOC starting.
Just a gut feeling, or is there any reason for that?
Just something about he was targeting Devonte more than
Yeah,
whoever else started at quarterback for the Raiders last year. So, I mean,
Garot
it could Gardner Minshew could do that too, but we'll see.
it feels like it was a decade ago already, but I think it was last year. Last year was Jimmy Garoppolo on the Raiders for a little bit, right?
Was it, dude?
I
That's
think that was
crazy.
I think that was last year. Um,
We were drafting Garoppolo last year. Wow.
yeah, isn't that nuts? What would we got? A 1-2-6-1. We're definitely building a somewhat of an RB punt roster here. So I guess talk me through Gus Edwards, Rico Dowdle, Trey Benson, Ezekiel Elliott, Austin Eckler. I haven't really been clicking on any of these guys. The one I probably am most incentivized to look at here is Benson, just because of the Arizona correlation. But like, who are your plays down here? Are you skipping this range and going a little lower, or like how are you handling it?
I'm clicking Gus Edwards a lot recently. And then I'm mixing in Rico Dowdle, but I have a ton of Zeke. I feel better about Zeke than I do Dowdle. And then Trey Benson, I've noticed him fall a bit. So I've been clicking on him a little bit more than I had been. It's like a
Yeah,
hedge against my Connor exposure.
there's a decent separation between him and Connor now. Connor's ADP 75.
Yeah.
Trey Benson down here at 128.8. I feel like they were going at one point pretty close to one another. I have a pretty big fade on Gus Edwards, though. I am on the opposite side of you there. I am very, very, very heavily invested in J.K. Dobbins in that backfield this year.
I'm pretty heavy on J.K. Dobbins too. Yeah, I'm probably clicking on Dobbins more because I think I'm still clicking Zeke over Gus Edwards most of the time in this situation. But I love these 0 RB targets coming up. I'm clicking on basically all of them. Jalen Wright.
Mm-hmm. How about Charbonnet with the Seahawks? How you feeling about him?
Well, this is another guy who he like had a minor injury in practice or something, and all of a sudden he's falling to pick 150. And I liked him, when he was at ADP, so I'm pretty happy to click him, past ADP because I think I took him a ton last year. I think Brian was on the same thing. You might have been too, but the thesis was, well, if something happens to Kenneth Walker, he's going to be the workhorse, hopefully. And
And we,
Kenneth Walker just stayed healthy. It's the same thesis this year.
yeah, I think Charbonnet got like one start last year, and he got the work.
Hmm.
So it's still definitely on the table that that could happen again. I was drafting this next player I want to talk about pretty heavily early in the process, not as much lately because I've been waiting for some positive news. I think we finally got it this week. Mike Williams, I think, who just came off the board, is officially participating in Jets team activities again. I've thought he's a screaming value down here pretty much all spring and summer long. If you're going to get Aaron Rodgers, number 2 wide receiver, he's anywhere close to the same guy that's been on the Chargers the last few years. Again, he's a player that if he has a similar role, we were drafting him significantly higher than this before. I think I would expect him to be one of these final players that sees his ADP go up a little bit if we get some more positive headlines, if you will.
All right, thank you. Talk me back into Mike Williams. Hadn't been clicking on him for a while. I loved him in the beginning, like you mentioned, but I hadn't gotten back in on him, and I'm out on Dotson. I'm kind of out on Mooney. I don't mind clicking him if I need a receiver, but this range is really tough if you don't have good receivers.
Uh, Mooney, I think, got a little better when we got the Rondale
Mhm.
Moore injury news there with Atlanta. It's, yeah, man, like this whole Downs, Wilson, Leggett, Pearsall, Thielen,
Yep.
Demario Douglas range. Douglas is kind of the guy I hone in on here. Bateman, Wandale Robinson. Those are kind of my binkies, if you will. I was hoping to get Jalen Wright. It's okay that I didn't. I think like J.K. Dobbins is closing in on like my highest owned player in this range. Um, I don't have any Dallas correlation on the table here specifically, but I'm
Goff?
still,
Would you consider Goff 20 past ADP?
I suppose I should be interested in him with Amon Ra. And then we're back, we kind of landed back on what we talked about before. Now we have two different game stacks instead of being all in a one game. So but this is what I'm talking about with quarterbacks. People aren't looking at values at quarterback because they're just focused on their stacks. And I guess as the Amon Ra owner, if I wasn't like deliberately prioritizing him, that's how a player falls like Jared Goff, but
Mhm.
passes ADP. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is a pretty great click here. Get access to both games, and if Kyron runs in 2 of those touchdowns in week 17, then Matt Stafford's not getting there anyway.
You can get the right. You get the maybe the Arizona and the Rams players go off, the running backs and the wide receivers, but Jared Goff has the better quarterback day too. That's the other way it can go.
I like it, and that's one of the things like you're talking about. All the Amon Ra guy, half the Amon Ra owners are going to have Goff. Well, how many of them have a full stack from the Rams Arizona game?
Less, I would say probably less than the 8% of the field, which is what we're looking for differentiation. Feeling kind of terrible about what's left at running back. But we do have some of those rising ADP players coming up. Braylon Allen with the Jets, Jordan Mason with the 49ers, and I do have incentive to consider a 49er at this point, even though these are absolutely zero-ish RB picks. Are you willing to reach for guys just because you like them and the way that they fit with your roster? Are you kind of 13th round onward? Is this an okay time to start to be a little ADP agnostic, if you will?
Oh yeah, I do not care about ADP anymore. Get your guys.
So, where would you draw the line for that? Out of curiosity, like at what point do you stop caring about ADP?
Probably right here, actually.
Okay,
Probably, depending who's left on the board, but I'm pretty sure around this point, there's certain guys I'm just not going to click on, and there might be 10 guys in a row that I'm not going to click on. So don't care about scrolling. Like I've taken Whittington as early as like the 14th round, which sounds
mm-hmm.
insane, but
That's a little much, I think.
yeah,
But I
it's like on a
understand your
Matt
point.
Stafford team where I have the correlation, and it's like I'm not going to be disappointed by missing out on anyone else. So I
I
know
think I
I'm
can.
giving up value though.
I just think I can get a little crazy here, right? I feel pretty St. Brown, Cup, Worthy, Coleman, Dobbs, Myers. Like I think this is a really, really, really high floor, high ceiling wide receiver group.
Yep.
So I can just kind of go out and target players of their positions that I like. Man, I have a ton of Dobbins, but if he's still here and that being my biggest area of need, more running backs, I might just click it again here. Not going to worry as much about my overall portfolio exposure when I continue to get good value. I know it's only a few picks past ADP if he falls, but we need running backs. We don't need receivers as much on this team. And unfortunately, like, I don't know if it's fortunately or unfortunately. Like, I usually have the quarterbacks I already want because I'm trying to draft elite quarterbacks. I'm trying to draft at least one elite tight end. So I find myself drafting a lot of the same running backs and wide receivers in this specific range, if that makes sense. Which is one of the reasons why I'm interested in reaching a little bit for different players because I want to get different players.
I'm in this spot a lot where I have a ton of one guy. My portfolio like Dobbins, but I think he fits too well on this team to pass him up. We can fade him on a different team you draft where he's not as important, I guess, or possibly as important. I mean, Chuba seems fine too. The thesis is kind of the same, but Dobbins, it's possible he holds the job the whole season, while Chuba's path to doing that is a little bit tighter.
Plus, see, I see Dobbins as more of a home run hitter, man. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
a very efficient running back who can break a big run, who can, you know, take a screen to the house. Like he just seems like a more dynamic asset down here. We've seen him do it for years. So if he can get anywhere close to back to his old self, man, that Sam Darnold pick was more aggressive than I thought it was going to be tonight. I'm really into Dobbins. Obviously, I don't have to sell you on it if you are as well.
I absolutely am. Yeah, yeah. Dobbins over, and then I do like McLaughlin a lot. I was kind of backing off a little bit when I was taking a Steam A, but McLaughlin's still great to mix in. The usage that he saw in the preseason game with the starters was very promising.
And that's what I was talking about earlier with Zamir White, just like usage in a bad way. He was playing like deep into the second half last week with the Raiders. I don't really know what that means, to be honest with you, for him. But I don't think it's good. I'll put it that way.
I'm taking so much Alexander Madison in the last round recently, and it feels terrible. But uh, I mean, this is a spot. I'm completely fading Zamir White. I don't think this team is going to be completely awful like I do the Patriots. So I want some pieces of it. And
All
Labe, I
right.
think, mix in a little bit too.
So let's circle back to what you asked me at the beginning of the show. I keep meaning to get back to this. You feel like you're really worried about how New England scores fantasy points.
Hmm.
Specific
Yeah.
to Demario Douglas, did he already have his floor season last year with the 0 touchdowns? Is the
Yeah.
volume still going to be pretty good there? I
Uh,
think he's still an okay click at his ADP. I'm trying to be, even as a New England backer, I'm trying to be selective with who I pick from the Patriots. I think Douglas is one of those players that has a decent floor and ceiling. I think relative to cost at running back, Antonio Gibson is a decent pick because he should have some passing down work. It's everybody else on, obviously the field degrees Ramondre is going to have value as well. It's everybody else that I'm really leery of.
I actually you framed that really well. Demario Douglas still feels pretty good because the floor is probably his ADP. Completely stop clicking on Ramondre. Don't mind clicking Gibson because we found out he's only 26 years old, but I feel like I'd just rather click on any of the younger guys going around him. And
I have noticed Demarcus Robinson start to fall quite a bit
oh yeah,
um, because of Whittington. That's definitely directly correlated. I'm just going to click on Douglas again here. I'll be a little bit of a homer and admit that's a big reason why. But I think this is a player that has uh, he is the new Jacoby Myers for the Patriots. I'll put it that way. He's going to have standalone value, and I have a Week 17 mini stack with Dobbins there, so that correlates pretty nicely as well. I think that's another reason I've been doing it.
I've been taking Hunter Henry because he usually has
Mm-hmm.
pretty good playoff correlation, and I'm always light on tight end by the time he comes around. But I mean, that's one guy I guess I'm not as worried too, kind of like Demario Douglas, but we still need Hunter Henry to have that 1-2 touchdown game.
As he comes off the board next. Um, I still think the path to the Patriots beating their ADP and being worth owning this year is probably not as likely as I thought it was going to be, unfortunately, as we got into the draft season, is getting Drake May on the field. If
Mhm.
Drake May is able to take the field and be the special player that they thought he was going to be by virtue of selecting him with the third overall pick in the 2024 NFL draft, that raises it's the rising tide that lifts all boats, right? If the quarterback is good and he makes the offense efficient, that's how these guys succeed. Chuck, I'm starting to get concerned New England is just going to hide Drake May this year and not use him that much. That's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, just them saying like, I mean, it was something like we were impressed with what he did in preseason, but we're going to stick to the plan. And to me,
Right.
that's dumb. If you have new information that he's ready now, play him now, dude. Jacoby Brissett is not the future of the franchise. Drake May possibly could be.
Yeah, that's where I net out too. I don't understand what you get out of delaying his ownership of the franchise QB role. You drafted him for that reason. I don't understand. Brissett is a professional quarterback. Kudos to him. He's making a great living for himself. But you're 100% correct. He's not the future of this franchise.
I mean, what are they waiting for? A stronger offensive line?
Maybe. I guess. Well, let's get back to the draft here. This is not the Patriots show. I'm going to reach a little bit for Jordan Mason just because I have that correlation with both of my stacks now. Week 17 correlation with the Lions, Amon Ra and Jared Goff, and then Week 15 correlation with the Rams skill players I took in rounds 2 and 3. So I like that pick here.
Just with Jordan Mason, it's tough because like, do we have like for sure confirmation that he's going to be the, or what kind of confirmation do we have that he's going to be the guy if something happens to CMC?
I mean, a lot of coach speak. I don't think it's written in stone. You're definitely wise to point that out. I'm not like 100% out on selecting Elijah Mitchell at cost. But I do think Jordan Mason is still a fine pick, especially since we've already established we're pretty ADP agnostic in this range. We feel like all these rounds are virtually worth the same value, if you will, in fantasy. I'm not really going to sweat Mason in the 15th round versus the 18th round. Like, I just think it's a good pick to have access to a potential high ceiling asset on the probably one of the best three teams in football. So, that's, I guess, the case for Mason as far as I'm concerned. Even if it's a little more expensive than we think it should be, does it really even matter? Is basically what I'm saying.
Oh yeah, taking ahead of ADP, I have absolutely no problem with. I think that's great. Um, Another guy that just went, I'm pretty sure way ahead of ADP that I've seen get drafted a few times. I've taken him a few times. Tim Patrick on Denver, who might be the wide receiver too, because apparently everyone else on the team besides Cortland Sutton is not good at playing the wide receiver position.
Tim Patrick, I mean, he missed the entire season last year, so
Mhm.
that is an enormous amount of time in the grand scheme of things in the National Football League. But let's not forget that he was a starting wide receiver for them when they still had Jerry Jeudy in the picture over there, and he was still able to command a healthy amount of targets. So now without Jeudy in the picture, maybe they're not feeling as strongly about Troy Franklin as we thought earlier in the process. I mean, that's easily the path to Tim Patrick touches. I don't know if Marvin Mims is going to be out there in starting three wide receiver sets, but I feel very, very good about that Sutton Patrick duo being out there for. Is it going to be Bo Nix to start the season? I mean, I think it should be.
I thought I don't know exactly what I'm under the impression Bo Nix starts the season with Tim Patrick, Cortland Sutton, and Josh Reynolds as his top three
Mhm.
receivers.
So then, do you not like that Marvin Mims selection in this range? I think we've kind of said time and time again here that the path to running backs stepping into large roles due to like a role change or an injury ahead of them on the roster, it's just very, very different than wide receivers, right? So I think even though it's relatively low risk, I'm not as interested in like clear wide receiver four, wide receiver fives in this range because I don't know if the upside is truly there, if that makes sense.
I went through like a 2 week stretch a few weeks ago where I clicked Marvin Mims as one of my preferred late round guys, but now I just because I mean the thesis, what again, same as like half the guys I'm picking in the last round, they can run in a straight line fast and catch up a long touchdown. But now I don't even have the confidence he's going to be on the field to do that. So
I just think you still we spent way too much time on the Patriots a few minutes ago, but I think you still have receivers here on the board that are clearly going to see starting wide receiver
mhm.
reps on their offenses. We clearly have a couple of opportunities with the Giants. I just took Wandale Robinson. He's my favorite, but I think I think Slayton has an opportunity to be a starter alongside Neighbors and Wandale Robinson. I'm not exactly sure what Jalen Hyatt's role is going to look like or how he's going to disrupt that for the Giants, at least early in the season. Demarcus Robinson just came off the board. I still think he's probably the leader in the clubhouse over Whittington for work in three wide receiver sets for the Rams. Um, Andre Josevich seems to be. It's still early. There's nothing like definitive declared yet, but he seems to be the winner of the slot wide receiver competition for the Bengals right now. We just got information Javon Baker with the Patriots is on the outside looking in, and we've got Tyquan Thornton potentially as a free starter. I think Trey Tucker with the Raiders probably is like by default the next best option behind Myers and Adams. Like I think we have De'Ami Brown who has been playing in two wide receiver sets for the Commanders with Jahan Dotson kind of falling out of favor with the new coaching staff. Like there's just so many wide receivers down here, dude, that are going to be starting in week one that nobody's really picking.
Gonna throw out Jalen Naylor, who apparently looks good,
He
or it
had a
doesn't look
pretty,
bad.
yeah, like he's had a pretty full plate in the preseason. I mean, I keep going. We've got Alec Pierce with the Colts, especially with Josh Downs dinged up. Mac Hollins with the Bills with all of their injury issues. A.T. Perry, who we took on a couple of shows together, I think last week with the Saints, should be starting. KJ Osborne, even a guy like a Justin Watson with the
Yeah.
Chiefs now with Marquise Brown a little dinged up for Kansas City here to start the season. Like there's definitely past the playing time for so many wide receivers here that I would rather select than just taking a clear wide receiver four. Like a are there ceilings with some of these players? Absolutely, but I don't like a Malik Washington, for example, with the Dolphins. Like I just can't click on him because I don't see the path to his playing time. There are a lot of guys in this range that I think are kind of like landmines like that.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I take Malik Washington here and there, knowing he's probably going to be a zero. I think he gets there if something happens to one of the top two receivers. Might not be good though. It's more just situation than it is talent.
Is Jawan Johnson officially our favorite late round tight end now with the positive news that he's going to be activated and start practicing for the Saints? He's a pretty dynamic player, right?
Oh, he's been my favorite late round tight end. Yeah, just I still don't understand why he's not moving up in ADP.
Well, hopefully we can change that here tonight because I just took him here in round 17. And I think with an elite asset in Trey McBride at the top of my roster, feel pretty good about landing on another one of my 2682 until I die rosters tonight.
Love it.
Now we have, I don't just say that to say that. It's because we've quote unquote done the research. We've seen, we have the data, right? 2682 seems to be one of those ideal just kind of combinations to land on here in Underdog, right?
Yeah, I'm 255 drafts in now, so I'm gonna see. That's just on Underdog. I'm up to 1,300 drafts total on all the sites, but with BBM rankings, curious what my exposures are for roster builds. 2682 number one, 2673 number two, and then 2583.
What's the percent of your rosters on 2682?
25%.
Yeah. Okay. That seems about right. Mine's probably closer to like 80%, but I also have less volume than you, so that's part of it.
Yeah, 2673. I go for the. I think I probably punt tight end. Yeah, late round tight end. I have in 39% of my team, so that fits why I have so many 3 tight end teams.
I love that all of the wide receivers that you and I just mentioned with our little rant about like free picks down here are now all getting selected. So maybe like half of the users here are probably watching the show tonight. So appreciate you guys joining us. We are still trying to get new subscribers to our new best ball channel here. So I know there'll be a giveaway coming up soon when we hit a couple hundred subscribers here. There, we're also looking to get to 10,000 subscribers on our regular fantasy slash DFS channel. So for those of you that are watching this live or on replay, we'd really appreciate it if you could click on those buttons if you haven't already. Brian will be doing a giveaway once we hit each of those goals, and Chuck and I love spending his money, so we hope you guys are interested in doing that as well, helping us get there. Really, it helps everyone. It helps us, and it helps you potentially be eligible for a nice prize from Brian. So I guess that was one thing I wanted to make sure we hit on before we wrap up for the evening here, as I am now officially on the clock for my last selection in this contest. You had mentioned to me that you are, I will say regrettably, clicking on Alexander Madison. I think my favorite wide running back to select here, Eric Gray. Talked about him pretty early in the process with you. With Tyrone Tracy sidelined, I really like him. I also like Deneric Prince with the Chiefs if he is truly going to be ahead of Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So those are two of my favorite guys in this range. I am going to go with Gray on this build, though.
Well, Prince has to beat out that Case and Steele guy first.
Carson? I think it's Carson.
Carson Steele?
I haven't clicked on him once.
Oh, I'm not going
It
to.
It is Carson Steele. Wow, that shows you how much you and I are plugged in. I can just come up with the name of a player. I've probably only read that name like 3 times in my life. Couldn't tell you what he looks like, what college he went to, but I knew he was on the Chiefs. Chuck, this has been awesome. I actually feel like this is one of our more I felt like this was a good discussion tonight. Is what I'm trying to say. Game theory wise, I've really enjoyed picking your brain this evening, as I do every single time we do a show together. And I look forward to doing another draft with you as soon as possible. I don't think we have a formal schedule for our next show, our next draft just yet, but we do have, just to reiterate, I believe a lot of content coming over on our regular Occupy Fantasy YouTube channel for the preseason games, the final week of the preseason. We've got a 2-game slate tomorrow, 3-game slate on Friday, pretty big day of games on Saturday, and then a 3-game window on Sunday. And then we'll be done with football until it's all for real on September 5th, Chuck.
I can't wait, dude. We finally get to sweat the teams we've been building and talking about all summer. And I just I want to shout out Ken in the chat. Keep up the good work, gents. Only a couple more weeks till it's here. Well, some of this good work, you'll have to hop on a stream with us. We have 2 more weeks, so we'll schedule it.
I mean, the last time that Ken got on the stream with us, it was the best team that any of us drafted, and you know that all too well. So we
Yeah.
absolutely would love to get him back on here. Here's where I sit. I'm happy to kind of most of the teams that I draft are on the channel here, so everything is kind of public with where I stand and what I'm rooting for this season. These are my highest exposed players. You notice these are a lot of names that I talk about on every show with Chuck, and I think a lot of these are names that you talk about even when I'm not on the channel, Chuck, because you and I seem to have pretty similar leans. I think that's because we talk a lot about this stuff. Um, Not a tremendous amount of players where I'm more than 3x over the field. It's pretty much only the guys that you see on the screen here. And without having the numbers directly on the screen, these guys are all over like the ADP board. So that is what I was kind of talking about earlier. I am drafting stacks, and then I'm just kind of picking my guys around them, man. I think I'm going to keep doing that for the next 2 weeks here.
Yeah, at least you have takes. I showed my exposures on stream yesterday, and I have 3 guys over 20%. So I
All
have no
right.
player takes.
So if people are looking for player takes, these are my player takes on the screen. Chuck, this has been awesome. Thanks for doing this. Do you have anything for the people? Otherwise, take us out of here.
We'll see you guys in a couple of days. Thanks for watching.